What's up, everybody? Will here from St. Augustine Kayak Fishing. It's November. It's time for sea trout. The sea trout have moved in. We're in St. Augustine, obviously, by the name of my page. Northeast Florida, if you're unfamiliar with St. Augustine. This time of year, the trout move in. And right now, there's a lot of smaller trout. There's some bigger trout around too, but for the next few weeks, it's just going to get better and better and better and better. And throughout the winter, the trout fishing in this area is top notch. And there's maybe better places in the world to do it at, but I don't know where they're at. It's absolutely awesome here. And so today I'm going to talk about 4 different ways that I catch trout, the 4 rods that I take with me, and how they're rigged up. And I pretty much do the same. You know, I rig them up the same way. I may change bodies out of different colors or something, but this is what I use for trout fishing. One of these 4 things catch probably 99% of my trout. Okay, so we're going to start with topwater. We're going to start with the topwater baits because that's what I usually start with in the mornings. When it's low light conditions, you know, mornings, evenings, sometimes on cloudy days, foggy days. Another time is during eclipses. You get a solar eclipse, that really fires off the topwater bite just for that few minutes that the eclipse is in full effect. It's pretty crazy how they go into like night mode during that. But for trout, I like a couple of different style baits. One is a cigar style, and this one here is a Rapala Skitter walk and baby trout pattern. And big trout like to eat little trout, so baby trout is a good color. This has got a deeper tone. You can hear that. And it's a walk the dog lure, meaning whenever you jig it, it's going to go back and forth like this here. And that is a great redfish bait, great trout bait, great snook bait, great bass bait. I mean, there's a lot of fish will take this bait. But this is a go-to for big trout. Baby trout Skitter walk. And my other favorite topwater bait, this one's not in baby trout, but it's in mullet, is a storm Chug Bug. This has a much higher pitch rattle. And I honestly think this is probably a better trout bait than the Skitter walk as in overall catching numbers. I think the higher pitch makes it sound a little more attractive to a trout, whatever. I've caught more redfish on this than I have trout, and I've caught more trout on this than I have redfish, and I've fished them about the same. So they both catch trout, but I think the Chug Bug is just about as good as it gets for topwater bait. And that's, also will catch snook and redfish and bass and, tarpon and everything else that swims will also eat this. But so that's how I start the day. I start the day with topwater. All right. And then as the sun comes up, gets a little bit higher in the sky, I'll go subsurface. And most of the time I'll start, if I'm fishing an area that I've never been to, I'll throw paddle tails. If I'm just searching an area and just trying to figure out a bite, I'm going to throw some paddle tails. And if you're unfamiliar with what a paddle tail is, it's just a plastic swim bait that whenever you pull through the water, it has a tail on it that, there's different styles. This particular one's a Hackney Junior Shad, Junior Belly. And it's got kind of a paddle tail like that, and it goes through the water, spinning like this, and the body rolls like that. So it gives it a nice cadence whenever it's in the water. You don't have to do anything. You just cast it and reel it. Cast it and reel it. You don't have to jig it. You don't have to do anything. The motion is built into the bait. Actually went out last night, and this exact bait here, we caught about 75 trout on it in about 4 hours. So, it's pretty easy, just cast and reel. Now there's a lot of different styles of topwater or of paddle tails, and you can go to a Bass Pro or one of your local shops, and they'll have a whole wall filled with paddle tail baits. And it's kind of I don't know that one brand's better than another. I know that some I seem to have better luck with than the others. My go-tos are, like I have rigged up, there's a Hackney Belly Shad. This is a local bait here in St. Augustine, so if you're watching elsewhere, they may be not available in your area. But this is really good in our area, and I like a blue or a white or like a kind of a silvery clear color this time of year. And this is another local company that I throw a lot, and this is Ancient City Outdoors. And just you know, this is a smaller paddle tail compared to this belly shad. You know, and sometimes the fish are wanting a smaller profile bait, so you give them a smaller profile bait. If they're ignoring this and you're seeing them hit baits, well, this is a lot smaller. Maybe they're hitting smaller baits. Try that one. You know, so I carry 2 or 3 different sizes of baits with me, and with the paddle tail, it's real easy because they're on a jig head, so you don't have to cut and retie. You can pop the body off. You got your jig head here, which I like to use in my area. I like to use a 1/16 ounce jig head, and Fish Bites makes an awesome jig head. Super sharp. This particular one's caught well over 100 fish on it. It's still super sharp, and you know, most of the paint's still on it. It's got a little bit of teeth marks, but then you just put a new body on it, and you change the whole look of that whole bait. You just change the whole look of that bait in just a few seconds and not having to do any tying. So paddle tail is a good way to cover water and to you know, search out fish pretty easily. And you don't have to know a lot about artificial fishing to throw a paddle tail. You just throw it out and reel it. It's real simple. The next bait that I use a lot of, back up just a second. Talk a little bit more about these paddle tails. There's different types of paddle tails. Whenever I say a paddle tail, you got, you know, this style paddle tail. Then you've got curly tail jigs, which this is a Fish Bites curly tail. Fish Bites Fight Club. They make a, you know, a lot of people are familiar with their strip baits, but they also have molded baits. And this is their a little curly tail like that. All right, so it's scented. It tastes good to the fish. It's got all the pheromones. Scientifically proven to mimic a bait fish's pheromones. These were designed here at Whitney Laboratory by Dr. Carr, and they've been out for, you know, several years, and they're proven fish catchers. There's a lot of different styles. You know, there's an actual paddle tail. They have a jerk bait, a curly tail, and then a shrimp body. And so you can put all those on that jig head and just fish it. You don't have to worry about, you know, changing out, cutting and retying. You just put a different body on and you change a whole different look. You can go from a bait fish pattern to a shrimp pattern in split seconds. Maybe not split seconds, but a few seconds. And I like to use, these are 1/16 ounce. I fish a lot of shallow water. If you're fishing deeper water, heavier current, you know, you want to adjust your weight to the situation you're fishing. I fish a lot of shallow, and I don't want my bait to fall fast, so I use a lightweight for the most part. Alright, so the next one that I use primarily, this is probably one of my favorite all-around baits to use, is a suspending twitch bait. And this particular one is an unfair rip and slash, which it's, I don't know if you can see or not, it's about 2 weeks old, and you know, it's been chewed on. I mean, I've caught a ton of fish on this in the last 2 weeks. So, but this is a suspending bait that will suspend, you know, I mean, it's probably the best in 2 to about 8 feet of water, but it sinks real slow, and you got to jig the rod tip to get it. Whenever you jig the rod tip, it flashes and comes back up to the surface and kind of gives it a real erratic motion. And again, this is a pretty loud lure, you know. It's got a pretty good rattle to it. And I think that attracts fish in the dirty water and in like nighttime conditions, low light conditions. Another very popular twitch bait is a mirror lure, Mirrodine. This is a 17. Many people throw this for trout. This is an awesome trout lure. It's not quite as loud as the unfair is, but still got a good rattle to it. So, you know, these darker colors, we've got a lot of tannins in our water around this area. So I throw a lot of these darker colors, but mirror lure, Mirrodine is a great trout bait. You will catch a ton of trout throwing it, but it's a slow bait. You gotta work it. It's not super slow. You can work it fast, but it does very well slow. You can pause it and just let it sit there, and most of your hits are going to come whenever it's paused. So while it's paused, be ready for that hit. It's a very deadly bait. But this is an unfair rip and slash. Here's one that's not all chewed up. I'll show you what that one looks like here. It's not all chewed up, but you know, they're a good looking bait and they catch a lot of fish. And the final way that I'll have my rod jigged up to go catch spotted sea trout is with a popping cork. With the popping cork, I will again use a jig head. And normally I'll use a shrimp body. Sometimes I'll put a minnow body on there. If I see fish busting on minnows, I might put a minnow body on there, but in all likelihood I'll have a shrimp body on here. A popping cork imitates fish feeding on shrimp very well. It does a couple things. It makes a lot of noise and it makes a lot of surface disturbance. Whenever this is pulled through the water, it makes a big surface disturbance and a lot of noise. And so it looks like something's being chased by fish. It looks just like, you know, they're just seeing disturbance on the surface, and so they figure it's a feeding frenzy is getting ready to start. And then this is hanging below, and so they see that fall back down after that feeding disturbance, and they hit it. And it's called the deadly combo. DOA patented that name, I believe, so you can't, not everybody can call it a deadly combo, but that's what it's known as a deadly combo. It's just a popping cork, a length of leader, maybe 18 inches. You know, kind of depends on your water depth. This is about 2 feet deep. A small jig head, you know, again, this is a 16th ounce jig head, and it's the Fish Bites Bite Club shrimp, this one right here. I prefer the Fish Bite shrimp over the Gulp shrimp due to the fact that these are a little tougher. In fact, they're a lot tougher. And I think the scent in the Gulps are kind of absorbed into it, and the scent in this is made into it. It's in the process of forming the lure. The scent is integrated into it. So I think this is just a little bit superior to the Gulps, but you can do the same thing with Gulps. It's not gonna, you'll still have good results, but I prefer the Fish Bite shrimp. They seem to be a little bit more durable. You won't go through a pack of Fish Bite shrimp on a trip normally. You'll go through 2 or 3 packs of Gulp shrimp on a trip. And not because the bite's different, it's because the baits last longer. My pretty much normal setup here, I run 20-pound braid with 20-pound leader. That's a little heavy for some areas. Some areas I'll scale back down to maybe like a 12 or 15-pound braid with maybe a 15-pound leader. But most of the area I fish up here is pretty, you know, it's not real clear water, so I don't need to be super concerned about my line size. I fish pretty much everything on a 7-foot to a 7'4" medium fast rod. You know, I like a medium action. Not so, I don't want a real whippy rod. I want something with a little bit of backbone, because you may be trout fishing, you may, you know, hook into a big snook or a big redfish or something like that. And you need something that's going to pull, or you may hook into a big monster gator trout. You know, you may get a 30-inch plus trout. You need something that's got enough backbone that it can handle that big of a fish. A lighter tackle rod, like a light action, is a lot of fun with little schoolie trout, you know, up to maybe 20 or 22 inches. Once they get above that, they start getting a little bit harder to control with that light tackle. So I usually use a medium. I do have a light setup, though, that has a little 1000 series reel on it I use once in a while. But these are my 4 setups that I take with me pretty much everywhere I go. And I don't care if I'm fishing the Atlantic coast or the Gulf Coast or the Keys. I'm probably going to be throwing something in this realm, you know, at least to begin with, and then I figure out a bite and we'll go from there. But those few setups right there, if you have, you know, a couple of those setups in your boat and in your kayak, and you're going out and fishing, you're gonna catch fish. You know, just you gotta be in tune with what the trout doing, and they're gonna be facing into the current, and they're gonna be on a transition. So current, transition, find those 2 things, you'll probably find some trout. Hope this video helps you. Rig up how you know, how I showed you here, and you'll be successful on your trips. You know, even if you're not real confident with artificials, these are all pretty easy, relatively easy baits to use, especially the popping cork and the paddle tail. Those are 2 very, very easy, basic ways to get into artificial fishing. And They're very, very successful, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. All right, thanks for watching.